Hello, welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can find me at Skeindeer on Ravelry and Instagram. And there's also the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits. I keep opening every episode with a knit along that we are currently doing, which is the Color Your World Socks Cal, which is basically a knit along for the sock pattern that I published a few months ago now. And I am, as ever, enjoying seeing all the cast-ons happening there, all the colour choices. It's just such a treat. So if you want to join that, feel free to. There's no closing date yet. I want to give people lots of time to do this because a lot of people have never done colourwork socks before, so you should have time to kind of trial and error a bit there, I think, because there are a lot of things to take into account, especially like gauge and stitch count and stuff. Like, I don't want to go into too much detail right at the intro of my podcast episode. But yeah, like a lot of people, you know, with my shoe size would choose, say, 54 stitches in a sock. And I'd probably do that too if I did a vanilla sock. However, with colourwork socks, you know, you can't really rely on there being any negative ease there. You have to kind of go with zero ease, really. So I have 70 stitches in that sock pattern, and so for a lot of people that's something to adapt to. It makes it a bit easier to use short circulars though, so that might be worth trying. Anyway, I wasn't going to go into detail about that right now. I just want to welcome you. So welcome back, and welcome if you are new to this podcast. I tend to open my episodes by giving people a heads up that I have a more traditional view on knitting. I have a very big love for rustic yarns. I am from Norway, so it greatly influences my knitting, and it's actually the kind of reason why I started knitting. I mean, I started knitting just because it's taught in school, but like everybody's taught knitting in school and they don't keep it up. And so when I was living in the countryside for a year, it's kind of like a leap year school thing that we have in Norway, I picked up knitting, as many do at that school. Again, not a lot of people keep up with it. It's just a means to make time pass, because if there's one thing that will be available in a village, it is wool and yarn. So I picked it up then, and then I moved to London 2 years after that. And I guess as a way of feeling closer to home, I picked up knitting again. Like, I had brought some needles and yarn with me, and I had a bit of a stash in Norway, but it was just like, oh, that's on sale and I want to make a hat someday. Not a big deal. And I kept feeling like I wanted to look like I was Norwegian, because I really liked, if I was walking around in London, I would see someone with a Mercury sweater, for instance, or a Zeta cardigan, and I could tell that's someone who is either Norwegian or has at least been to Norway. So I kind of wanted to have that kind of thing that I could be recognized by, and kind of, yeah, just feeling a little bit closer to home. So that has greatly influenced my knitting, and it still does to this very day. Although now I am kind of coming out from under the rock that I've been living under as a kind of solo knitter, where I've only cared about my niche interest in knitting, and I never really socialized about my knitting. In the past few years I've been going to lots of knitting meetups. I have engaged more with the social groups online, Ravelry, you know, this podcast. So I'm opening my eyes to this world of more modern designs and the top designs on Ravelry and the designers there, and seeing kind of the value of those knits as well. Because initially I was like, well, if it doesn't have colour work, I don't know if I'm interested. So things are changing a lot, and so you will see a good mix really of colour work and non-colour work and tradition and modern, and I like that. So yeah, long introduction today, a bit of a storytelling as well. I thought we could kick things off after that with my only finished object for this week. But at least I have a finished object at last. I don't think we had that for the past few weeks, which is fine, but we do this time. And it's a pair of socks. Now this is the Villemo socks. It's Villemo Karlebsdotter, I don't remember. It is a pattern by Anna Friberg, also known as Janesty, previously known as Alpaca Anna, a Swedish designer and friend of mine who asked me and a couple of others to test knit for her. And I made the deadline, you guys. She is launching this pattern the very day that this episode goes up, on Thursday. So the pattern should be up by the time this episode is up. So head over there. I don't know what to say, guys. I mean, this was such a treat to knit, and I finished these on time, which is saying a lot, because I didn't finish it on time due to the time pressure, because The only requirement Anna had given was to finish just one sock. Like, that's really the only thing she needs to know if the pattern works, and to have enough variation of the sock pattern to have people see when they consider whether they want to cast it on or not. But I made two because it was such a treat to make. It's just, you have these short sections, so you don't really get, you have these short sections, you don't really get tired of any bit. Like this cuff thing, very short, cable repeat. It's, I don't know how many rows, but it's a few rows. And it's not that many repeats of it. I think you're supposed to do 3 and I did 4 because I just wanted a slightly longer leg. Again, you know, heel flap, separate thing. You do this thing, also quite short. This thing, quite short. This thing, short. That's short. It's like, the way it's sectionized is really, like, it just keeps you going. And that's like something I miss with socks sometimes, because sometimes you literally do everything the same from here all the way down. Like, you might put in a bit of a heel, but generally there's not much variation there. I have done some modifications that I feel like I should mention before you cast these on. So these socks are supposed to be knit at a very tight gauge. So what I did is actually going kind of varying the stitch count and the gauge a little bit, and it might not have been a good idea. I have a feeling these might be a bit on the larger size. Right now they fit me perfectly, but who knows, maybe with time they might actually expand a little, and I may not have taken that into account. But what I did, whether it works or not, I chose size large, even though my feet measurement suggests extra large, but I went up in gauge, or down if you will. I went up in heel size. So I should have a 32 stitch gauge, although sometimes it measures at 30, which is a bit concerning. And I figured I needed to go looser in gauge for the leg than for the foot, and that's something I'm going to keep doing now, and also maybe keep recommending my pattern. And I've seen people in the Ravelry group that I have who are doing the knit along for my socks, that they start with the foot and it fits them fine. They get to the leg and it's a bit tight. And I would generally recommend going up a 1/4 to a 1/2 needle size for the leg, because we have slightly narrower feet than we have legs usually. So I think that's a good thing to maybe take into account, and I did that for these. So I went down a needle size after the heel flap. Hindsight tells me I should have gone down a needle size whilst doing the heel flap as well, because the heel flap is a bit on the larger size, and that is entirely my fault because I went with the large needle size initially. Oh well, oh well. So yeah, the socks, very happy with them. Very happy with my yarn choices as well. I was very unsure at the time if I could take part, even if I had the right kind of yarn for it. But did a bit of a stash dive, and I used Regia and Woolmiser, both of which I got in a swap with Dana. So it's kind of nice to be able to use these at last. And I'm really happy with Woolmiser Twin. It's just a treat. They do colours so well. But it's a bit of a heavier sock yarn than most. It's denser. And that might have been what affected my gauge, so maybe from now on I will knit that a bit tighter than I normally would have. I don't think I have much more to say about this than just head over to Ravelry, head over to the pattern page. You can find that via my project page link in the show notes, and because it's all linked, it's all up. Have a look at the pattern. So I'm going to put these away now after a little close-up where I hope you won't see that I have yet to weave in the ends, because I don't like weaving in ends. And so for my first work in progress for this week's episode is the exploration station. Now I have added an extra 2 wedges, which I will show you in a bit. But first I thought I would mention the brioche, because I'm just about ready to start. I have swatched for it. This is my very first brioche. I have really never felt called to make anything brioche before. It's just not something that has appealed to me visually, so I just never heard any brioche patterns calling my name, so I never cast it on, and now I'm really late to the party. And it's alright, like, it's nice. I totally get what people mean by it being a squishy pattern, or squishy fabric that you get. And so you'll find that there's something funny going on somewhere between here. The fabric has changed just a little bit, like right here up to here. The reason being, I don't know why, but I have done something a bit different from that point onwards, and it saved me so much time. So here, the first few rows, I worked each row twice according to the pattern, which is fine. It's simple, it takes forever. Whereas here, I went and had a look at Sockmatician's video on one pass brioche, where you work the row in one go. And seeing as I'm very late to the brioche party, I don't want to come here and like tell everybody how to knit brioche. But why are we not knitting brioche that way? That is brilliant. It's really easy to do. As someone who does color work, certainly, that was just a walk in the park. Now the only problem, and this is perhaps because that's not included in the video, is how to finish off that row. So I don't know, there's something funny going on with the very last stitch you can see here. That's not very nice. And it doesn't work with the I-cord either. It's just horribly ugly on either side. So I need to come up with I need to understand brioche more so than just knowing how to do it, I think, because this is pretty horrifying. Everything else is beautiful. It gives a different tension. As you can see, there's something going on here. But I'm fine with that, I'm happy, but I need to start off by using that one pass brioche method from row 1, which is why I need to solve this problem ASAP. But it will save me so much time, especially because I'm making a slightly larger shawl. I need this to work. So I need to make this come out nicely. I need to figure out how to finish and start these rows. And I have found a good video for how to do the increases. I haven't tried it, but it should work. So yeah, that's my little banter about brioche. And if you have any resources on the one pass brioche that might solve my issues, that will be so helpful. I am a bit stuck right now. I do want to send out a thank you to those of you who recommended me trying the one pass brioche. I've had at least 2 people recommending it, so that was a great advice. I am so happy to have found this method. I can only recommend that video to anyone who wants to do brioche a bit quicker. And this is my exploration station. So this is just the wedges, so you can see it's quite big, and I want it to be big. I'd rather have a big shawl than having to stretch it out while blocking, because I like this squishy garter. I can't believe I've come back to garter. I think that's like the most profound change after I've gone into shawl knitting. You know, again, as a colorwork knitter, I don't really get many shawls done, and the past few months I have had a little peek at shawls. I've tried a few, and garter was generally, you know, my beginner stitch. It's not even a stitch, it's like a fabric, and so I kind of stopped liking garter as I kind of progressed as a knitter. But you can do so many amazing things with garter, so this is what I've done. And I have now worked in a one pass brioche row here. As you can see, every stitch has a yarn over next to it. They're known as shawls. I don't know why. So double the stitch count here, but I don't know what to do at the end here. These are actually these 3 stitches I knitted from the upcoming row. I just had to put them on the same needle because otherwise they'd fall out and it will be messy. I mean, I talked at length about this shawl in my previous episode, so I don't think there is much more to say. I'm using a variety of dyers yarns here. It's all listed on Ravelry. I'm, yeah, not really changing much beyond the 2 extra wedges and doing one pass brioche. Except I'm also gonna change the slip stitch section to eyelets, but that's far away right now. Right now I have to focus on the brioche, and it's a bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie. It has turned out to be a lot easier than I thought, but the one pass brioche, also very easy, but there are these problems that I'm having with the last stitches, how to do that in a nice and pretty way. I will say that the last few rows on my swatch are looking a lot nicer, so we might be getting there. We might. Another work in progress, which we haven't seen in a while, is my Mercury socks. At last. So here they are, and this is really messy. What have I done? Okay, so what I've done, let's look at this sock first. Everything's falling down. So, I was looking at these socks and I was knitting them. And a friend of mine who does a lot of lace was like, aren't they a bit big? And I'm like, no, this fits me just fine. It's the stitch count I would use, and I've gone down in needle size to accommodate for it not being colour work. Yeah, but it's lace. It's so big. It is so big. Like, this is fine for my leg. It's absolutely fine. But for my foot, this could be a problem. So what I've done, I think I can show you this best on this side. I've decreased the two of the lace repeat. Can you see that? I really think someone has scheduled their grass cutting on every Wednesday, so I should really change my recording times. I don't think you can hear it. It's fine, it's fine. So you can see the two lace panels coming down together here. Because they're decreased, they're gone. So gone down from what, 72 stitches to 60, which I think is fine. And I'm also gonna experiment with needle size when I come to the foot, so that will be a bit more snug. So now I'm working the heel on this one, and I'm changing it a bit because I did the heel on this, the other sock, doing them concurrently, and it's a very small heel. Look at that cute little heel. That's not gonna work. I tried it on and it's like just covering my heel. So yeah, we need a bigger heel. So what I'm doing now, because now I've kind of split up some of the lace panels, and that's not going to look very nice either. So I'm going to take some stitches here and there so that the lace panels will be gone entirely when I get around to the foot and start doing them again. So that the heel will have 35 rather than 30 stitches, which is the usual stitch count I use for my heel. And then I can go up in needle size to this needle size I use for my heels. And then it should all be fine. So once I've done that with the other sock, I can compare and rip this heel out and do it again, which is fine. So this is the Fish Lips Kiss heel. It just needs to get a bit more heelness. I want to give you a close-up before we put it away. I'm using Countess of Blaze BFL sock yarn. It is an amazing yarn and an amazing red. So I'm gonna get red stockings. Now, of course, I had to spend all this fabric in the socks for the decreases, so we are getting some extra length there, but that's fine. Usually I make my legs a bit short on socks, so why not make them a bit longer? And the bag they're living in, for anyone who's curious, is a bag I got from Kettle Yarn, who is a local yarn dyer in London. And it's a very cute little bag. They were selling it, she was selling it at Edinburgh Yarn Festival actually, but I managed to get it online after the festival because that was one of my restrained regret items, so I've got that. I keep forgetting that I've promised to talk more about the needles that I use. On both of the projects that we have covered so far, I'm using my Hifa interchangeables. Now, I'm a sworn fan of the Knit Pro Novas, and they have been my go-to needles, my go-to interchangeable needles forever, but I am really leaning more and more towards Hifa sharps. My interchangeable Hifa sharps are just the best. I love them. They are slowly wrecking the skin off my index finger because I keep poking the needle, and I think I may have involuntarily tattooed myself because there's some dye in this little crack now. But yeah, you will notice that I don't talk about needle size that much, and the reason being is because needle size is very subjective. It is very important, needle size, but we can't talk about needle size as if it is the same for all. I hear that a lot. One person saying, oh, so what needle size are you using for that pattern? And they say, oh, I'm using, I don't know, needle size 3. And the other person goes, okay. And they maybe choose needle size 3 as well. No. For me, needle size 3 is a very, very tight gauge, personally. For other people, it's what they use when they want to knit a bit looser. Because people are different tensions, so we can't really talk about needle size as if it is the same for all. We need to talk about gauge. I know that's difficult and has a lot of numbers and it's weird, but it's just not the same. You can't assume that one needle size is the same for all. I mean, at some point, obviously, if you're talking needle size 15 millimeters, then yeah, that's big, it's loose, it's going to be loose for everybody. But when you're within a normal range of needle sizes, it is very subjective what kind of tension, what kind of gauge, what kind of fabric you end up with. So I think, I don't know what kind of change I want. I just want people maybe to discuss the gauge so that we actually know what fabric we're talking about rather than needle size. And this is not even to do with like skills or knowledge. I see like the most skilled people that I know of do this because we just know our own gauge and our own tension, and then when we talk about it, we may not consider that other people have a different one because we are not other people as well. So yeah, something I'll probably ramble on occasionally throughout my podcasting days. But I think that's enough for now. Let's talk about another work in progress, which is something we haven't looked at in a while, and it's my Agatha. Do you remember my Agatha cardigan? I was knitting this for the Selfish Sweater knit along that Andy Sutherland was doing, and the Andy Sutherland that Katie Finstein number 23 was doing. And I haven't made it to either, of course. They're both over and done with. But I have picked up the sleeve and it's finished. I have some stitch markers still because I want to compare with the other sleeve. But we have a sleeve, a full-length sleeve. And I have picked up the other sleeve. I have done the whole shoulder cap, which is like you pick up in the round and then you do short rows back and forth until you're down to the armhole at the bottom, the armpit, so to speak, and then you just knit it down. And I will say, although this is worsted weight yarn, I'm using Quince & Co. Lark, which I love. The sleeves don't knit up that quickly. I find I spend just as long on these sleeves as I do on fingering weight stockinette sleeves, because there's just so much going on. I mean, there's the rib and this lace panel going down, which actually makes it quite fun to knit. There's always enough interest, there's always enough going on, basically. So having a lot of fun making it, and I'm glad I picked it up again. It just kind of fell to the side a bit when I was trying to finish my Edinburgh cardigan that I never actually finished for Edinburgh. So it's good that I remembered that I had this. Never mind the white lines, I just like to remember how much extra I did for the armholes, even though that may have been a bad decision, so I don't know. But it has allowed me, even though I'm doing size large, it allowed me to do size extra large sleeves until I'm getting down to the decreases, because I've heard people say the sleeves are a bit on the more snug side, although other people have the opposite experience. So maybe I'll get a cardigan that's a bit loose in it. It should be. But I will say that if you want a fitted cardigan and you are between two sizes, you can't really go wrong with choosing the larger size because it's a rib, so it will be a bit hugging anyway. So I'm going to show you the front side as well. You are knitting this back and forth, which will save me a bit of steeking. I personally don't mind steeking, but this is quite nice too. And it makes sense. Usually I wouldn't knit back and forth because I can't stand purling. I like the flow of working in around. But this is actually fine because there's so much change between knit and purl and stuff, so I don't mind at all. And I love this colour. This should come as no surprise. But I did remember that actually when I bought this colour I was very unsure about it, because I had gotten it into my mind that I wanted bright red. And this, they didn't have red, so I was like, well, what's my second option? And then I came across this. And in hindsight, you know, as you can all tell, this is one of my favourite colours to knit with. And it's going to be great to have, and I don't care that summer's coming because I'm freezing all the time anyway. And for this cardigan I'm using a mix of needles. I am using Knit Pro Novas. These are the short interchangeables that only work on, well, they work on everything really, but they work especially well for 40cm cables. I think that's 16 inches. And for the body I'm using Knit Pro Symphony Dreams, which is the wooden version of that. I find them very similar apart from them being wooden, which was because I wasn't quite sure about needle size. I was wondering if 4.5 was on the bit tighter side for me. So I know wood needles can loosen things up a little bit. You're recommended actually to use needle size 4, I think, or 4.5, I don't remember, but I went for 4.5. I do have some issues with this pattern. I really want to gush about it, but I have some issues with it because it could be better written. I think it could have done well with a very skilled tech editor to make it more readable, because it keeps outlining the same things over and over again. It should really just say, continue in the established pattern except for this change. I don't know how to do that. I'm not that clever a pattern writer. I try to be, it's one of my aspirations. But yeah, I think it could have really benefited so much from that, because I know that a lot of people who knit and settle in patterns, they are new at garment knitting, so they choose these patterns because they look lovely, but they knit up fairly quickly because of the yarn weight that's being used. So yeah, that's maybe a little complaint that I have, but I love the pattern itself. Like, I love the end product that you're getting, so there's no complaint there. It's a wonderful design. But yeah, some tech editing would have been great for this one. And a bit of gush about the yarn. I am using Quince & Co. Lark, and these are the two skeins I have yet to wind. I'm sure I'll probably need both of them, so might as well wind them now. But yeah, just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like. It's just the most perfect yarn in this weight. I generally steer away from heavier weights because they just have a very short meterage and you end up getting a very heavy garment. I've rambled about this many times before. I just like having my knitwear to not weigh a ton so that I can actually bother to bring it around and change layers a lot as I need to. So this yarn, I think, is great for that because they have a crazy amount of meters or yardage let me just read the label because I can't remember, 123 meters. To me, that's like DK leaning on sport weight or vice versa, whereas this is worsted, which is fabulous. So you hold up this skein and you expect a 100-gram skein, but it's 50 grams. So I couldn't say enough wonderful things about this yarn. It is also a non-superwash, 100% wool, and you could never say this is itchy unless you have like particular skin, you know, problems, which is fine. My mum asked me, she was here in London this weekend, and asked me if this was cotton, because it's just soft. And having worked with this cardigan quite a bit and brought it around with me, there's no sign of pilling or any wear. It looks like a really lovely fabric. I think this will wear out beautifully. I expect every yarn to pill a little bit, but I don't think there's gonna be, you know, a pill monster, as I call them. I mentioned in the previous episode that Isolde Teague is now selling Norwegian yarn, and I just want to continue to emphasize that. She's selling Rauma yarns. There will be more of Rauma yarns coming in her shop, as she has said on Instagram. But for now, there is Finul Garn and Totro Gammel Serie, both of which are fingering, bordering on sport weight, 2-ply, pure wool, rustic yarns that are excellent for color work. What I didn't mention is actually, I was talking about the Serbu the book. It's a book of mittens from the village of Serbu. That book is in loop, but what I didn't mention is that also Isolde Teague has that in stock. So you can essentially get yarn and mittens all in one go from her webshop right now. I just forgot to mention it. Basically, I did see that she was selling those books at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which made me so happy. And I think this is such a positive sign that not only is this book being translated and being sold abroad, and this yarn is now being sold in the UK, I hope this will be the first step in a change of bringing Norwegian knitting abroad, because there is such a huge interest for it. I can tell as someone who lives outside of Norway that people really want to have these patterns and this yarn available, but there's been very little interest from Norway to share these things until very recently. Maybe just a lack of awareness that actually this is something people are interested, there is a market for this. I still have a ton of Norwegian books with amazing patterns that are unlikely to ever be translated, and they're quite new. And it's just, why? People want these things. I hear people telling me all the times, you know, oh, do you know if this is translated? You don't know where I can get this. Will it ever be? And it's like, I always have very disappointing answers to give, because there's just so little interest coming from Norway in translating these until now. So now the Serbu Mitten book is being translated, and yeah, I could go on and on. The other thing I wanted to clarify, I was expressing my joy over that Amelia of Arctic Knitting, Arctic Yarns, is going to be hand dyeing a series of Norwegian yarn, which is amazing, and I'm still super happy about that, and that she made her Kickstarter goal. What I failed to acknowledge is that there are other people doing this. I just wasn't aware, and one dye I want to mention that several people have commented I should be aware of, and I totally agree, I should. You should too. It's Verbit. So Verbit is a dyer who dyes pretty much all of my favorite Norwegian yarns. Yarns from Hillesvåg, yarns from Rauma, and yarns from Serbu Spinneri, and a couple of others I think as well. All of these are amazing, and I can't believe there's a dyer doing this, and I need to get my hands on that yarn at some point to keep my eyes on that yarn, maybe. Though to be fair, you know, my stash isn't particularly small, as you can see, so maybe not just now, but I thought you should be aware of that as well. And Amelia's yarns and Verbit yarns, totally compatible. You just have a bigger palette of hand-dyed Norwegian yarns to choose from now, which is amazing. So thought I should mention that as well. Sorry, just had to change things up here. I was just talking to the camera saying that I'm gonna cover my stash haul in a bit, but first I just want to talk about other things. And then my doorbell rang and I got my new stash haul load. It's so much, you guys. I have ordered more than 1.5 kilos of yarn, and my mom was visiting in London, so she brought the yarn that I've mentioned earlier that I purchased via my sister when this particular yarn shop was being shut down. So shall we just cover everything? Yeah. So I just got some pretty lipstick on, so hopefully this will distract you from this huge beast. No, it's not that I'm holding it too far away from me, it's just that literally it is very, very big because it's full of yarn. So I'm ready to open this just in front of you in just a bit. I just want to show you what my mom brought for me first. And it is a whole pile of Ask of Hillesvåg. Look at that. So we got 7 navy blue skeins and 1 yellow. And as some of you will remember from the last episode, is that I plan to make some bright yellow mittens. So I'm gonna make the Carolina Halvorsen mittens, as you see here. And I finally got the yarn that's actually used in these mittens. I had bought maybe 2 skeins of phenol yarn and they were just never quite right. So I've ended up using them for other things, swaps and another pair of mittens. So finally I actually have the mittens that I'm going to be using. And remember this colour because we're gonna see it in a bit. That's a spoiler. So yeah, look at all these beautiful babies though. So many lovely skeins. So I think we are looking at some yarn for the Marius knit along, which is the knit along I will be hosting from the autumn onwards. It might take a year to finish this whole knit along, to be honest, because I want it to be something that those of you who are not super confident colourwork knitters can take part of and take your time in finishing. So yeah, it's gonna be a big thing and I am hoarding yarn for it because who says I'm gonna do just one garment? So yeah, I'm not crazy. I just really, really like this yarn. And now I have really just purged all the potential sources I ever had for this yarn, because both the shop that's selling them here and the shop that's been selling it in my hometown are no longer going to be doing that. So yeah, shall we look at what I got in the mail? Before we do that though, I really just want to mention how Saskia of Ovis Et Cetera yarns has spoiled me rotten once more. Look at this. So I got 2 of these sets of sock yarns. This is the, I'm gonna try to pronounce Dutch now, Kempish Heidenschap, which is the kind of sheep that they have in the Netherlands. And it is hand dyed and it is wonderful. It's got nylon in it, which is fantastic. You've heard me ramble enough about rustic yarns with nylon, but look at these colours and I got 2 sets. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because one of the sets are going to be a giveaway for the Colour Your Work socks. So here's your prize. There will probably be a few other things in that prize as well, but this is definitely the main prize and it's so amazing. So let's just do a close-up of these colours because aren't they just the best? I don't know which one is my favourite, to be honest. And this is the main colour, which is kind of creamy. It's not white, it's, yeah, creamy. And so I think we're looking at some socks in the future. I'm hoping to make a design of this. Now the only like agreement that I have with Saskia is that I'm going to make a sock design of this other yarn she gave me. So of this yarn, basically, that's the only reason I have all this, which is so generous. But you know, maybe we're looking at another design here, because it's not just like I feel like repaying this generosity, which I certainly do, but just seeing this gradient is just so inspiring. So yeah, let's just hold together this amazing pile of Ovis yarns that I just know I'm so fortunate to have. Oh. I'm being silly. I am also putting off the reality that is on my floor right now in this big grey bag. So shall we just dive into it? Yeah? Alright. Okay, how do I attack this beast? Okay, I managed to put a hole in it, so we're just gonna do this. Oh wow, it's double. It's just gonna be like a Russian doll, this thing. Oh my goodness, this is so much. What have I done? So, first of all, another sweater quantities of the burgundy of Ask. Now, I don't know what possesses them to call this burgundy, but even if it's not burgundy, I love this colour. Look at this colour. Look at it. So I got 5, because that should be enough for a garment. So I don't know what I would do with this, but I'm no stranger to wearing this kind of pink anyway, so I'm not too disappointed that it's not really technically burgundy. So maybe this will be my first like simple raglan experiment that I have. I feel like this could be an easy replica of some of the sweaters that I have. The one that I wore in last episode, for instance. It's an H&M sweater that I really love. I just don't like the material it is made of. If I could have it in nice Norwegian wool, that would be the best. So this is a nice candidate for that, isn't it? So this is basically just more of the yellow that I have for the mittens I'm gonna make. And I thought I could totally wear this yellow, but now I don't know. Honestly guys, just tell me if this is my color or not. Can I wear this? Is it something that I could have a garment in? Or is it just not quite right for my complexion? I'm generally interested to know. I think if I did make it, it will be a cardigan. I've been toying with the idea of maybe making the blaster cardigan by Andy Satterlund, because I can just keep it open, and having it over some black or grey, it's gonna look quite nice. Even burgundy I think this could go with. So close up for those of you who want to see the colour a bit more clearly. I don't know. I mean, if it's not going to be a sweater for me, then it can be a sweater for someone else, so it's not the end of the world if it doesn't suit my face. I just like to know before I make it for me. So yeah, yellow, who knew? Oh my goodness, this is blue. So I have now got this pile, and this is a slightly different yarn, can you see? So just give you a close-up. This is Embla. Now, Embla is different from Usk because this is the DK version of Usk. So instead of having a meterage of, hang on, 315 meters in 100 gram skein, we have 210. So definitely more of a DK, this one. And yeah, it's no coincidence that you are looking at blue, white and red. I am not making the Norwegian flag nor the Union Jack. I am making a Marius. And this is probably going to be for my boyfriend, because he wants a Marius, I think. Or maybe I just coerced him into it. Regardless, he'll be getting a Marius, and I think this will be my main project for the Marius knit along once that kicks off. And I'll be using Embla. So this is already actually a planned purchase of yarn. So I thought I'd be getting lots of Rauma Tretråd strickegarn, which is the yarn that I have been recommending for my cyber mitten pattern. But this is pretty much a equivalent, and I got it really cheaply because this particular shop, which is norwegianwool.co.uk, I think, they are selling this out for half price. And there's still some yarn left there, although I have bought most of it apparently. So you can still get that if you are in the UK or nearby. So yeah, not gonna say how cheap this was, but it was quite cheap. It is still quite insane how much yarn I have bought since Edinburgh, because I bought so much then. I was like, I really don't need more yarn. A couple of years now. Yet the yarn keeps coming to me, so I have to. So we're just gonna keep this in the background now for the remainder of the episode so that I can feel the shame. And as I was about to... yarn is falling down. This is how bad this is. But yeah, as I was about to say before the postman rang the doorbell, is that I really want to talk about Ravelry, because Ravelry just had its 10th year anniversary, and I really love Ravelry, and it has profoundly changed the way I am as a knitter, really. And I want to talk about all the things I use Ravelry for, because I really love Ravelry. Can I say that once more? I love Ravelry. I spend a lot of time on Ravelry. I'm sure you do as well. I'm looking at you. First of all is projects. I am a Ravelry project page obsessed. Like, I literally assume that everybody is obsessed with project pages on Ravelry as I am. My project archive is a very organized one. I have literally added everything I have knitted since I moved to London 6 years ago. There are some things missing from my earlier knitting days because I just knitted stuff and gave them away. I didn't take pictures, so there's no point in really having them there. So it's not like everything is logged, but pretty much everything, like 97% of my knits probably are logged on Ravelry. I have everything there, and I would strongly encourage you to have that as well if you feel like you have it in you to be that obsessive about it as I am. It's just so nice to be able to literally see everything I have finished, not just this year, not just last year, but going back to my tab for 2011 or 2012, 13 and so on. I can see my progress in these sort of gallery snapshots that Ravelry offers me. So I would really recommend that, and if you're kind of curious what I mean, literally just go to my Ravelry page and browse my projects and look at the different types that are sorted by year, and hopefully you can see why that is really nice to have, and maybe you will feel like you want to have that as well. I hope so, at least. I like to see when other people have a similar sort of organized Ravelry project archive as well. Another thing I have sorted in tabs is the types of knits that I've made. So I have a tab for garments, I have a tab for socks, I have a tab for mittens or other hand garments, I have a tab for shawls and scarves. I have one for things that are made by either the Marius pattern or Star. I just named it Star because that's the origin. So that's a lot, and it will be sorted by most recently finished to the earliest project, so I can see my progression. It's very nice to see when it comes to the Marius pattern, because that was my beginner color work pattern, so I can literally go to the bottom and see how my color work has progressed, which is, yeah, really neat. So I couldn't speak more highly of having all your projects on Ravelry, and like, you don't have to be as obsessive about it as I am. But I literally, when I start knitting something, I create the project page right away. I will add as much information as I possibly can, and it kind of makes me feel like I've gotten more done with the project than I actually have, and it keeps me going, and it makes me feel like I want to finish so I can put more things on my project page. It has become quite the motivator. So yes, project pages, highly recommended. Every time someone tells me that I want to get my project page sorted on Ravelry, I want to have my projects there, I want to be good that way, I'm like, yes, 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 more people, more people. So yeah, what I put on this project page is literally everything. I link it to the pattern so that other people can make use of whatever I have done, whether it's color choices or modifications, which I will outline in the text section. I'll write up the needle sizes I've used. I usually use several per project. The sizes, of course, that I've knitted for. Lots of pictures of the progress as well as the finished object. It will actually very easily let you upload directly from your Instagram account if you find that easier. And one thing that has dramatically changed the way I do my project pages and everything else on Ravelry is the stash. So initially I did not understand the point of stash. I thought, I just didn't get it. I didn't know why I wanted to see all my yarn there. And I generally used the stash as a way of sorting out what kind of yarn I had available within my price range and local shops. So I'd added lots of like Stylecraft and cedar yarn that I had in some shops up the road from here, and some drops yarns that I had in my stash here and in Norway, just yarns that I knew I had easily available and could afford, so that they would pop up when I went to a particular pattern. And I could see if someone had used that as a yarn alternative on the yarn idea tab of a pattern, I could use that. That would be a nice feature on Ravelry actually, if you could do that, but that's not what the stash is for. And this autumn I decided to literally add everything I had in my stash because it was growing so fast I kind of had to. And I love it. I'm so happy I did, and it actually didn't take that long, not as long as I thought anyway. Literally all you need is having pictures of your yarn. If you have just one skein, you have a picture for that. If you have two, these go together as one stash entry. If they're different dials, then maybe not. But that's kind of generally the logic. I just want to squish this yarn forever, can you tell? And I just love going on my stash page. Again, I highly recommend that you just head over to my page and my stash and look through it and see, do I want this for my stash? Do I want to be able to browse my stash this way? And hopefully the answer will be yes. Because I just love that you can sort your stash by color. So if you have added the, not just the color number or name for that particular yarn, but the color category that Ravelry offers, you can sort it by color and you get a rainbow of stash that you can scroll through, and it is your own stash. So you can basically do that and see, well, where do I have all the green yarns? Okay, that's the green yarns. Yeah, okay, you can see your range of green yarns for whatever reason you might want to see that. And you could also browse it a bit more advancedly through the Ravelry sort of yarn browser, advanced search, that's what I'm trying to say. You can use your own tags. I use a tag for indie yarn, so I can separate those from the rest of my yarn. I have a tag for pure wool, which is what I mean when I say rustic yarns that are 100% wool. And I also have a tag for Norwegian, because I like to know which of my yarns are Norwegian, which are not. So yeah, I am so happy that I did that, and it also makes it very easy for me to know which yarn, how much of the yarn I have left, how much I have used up, where I used it, in which project. So the projects and queued items will be listed in each stash entry. So say if I use this for not just the Marius, but a pair of mittens, both of these will be listed with little icons on the project page. If you go to, say, Miss Rachel's gauntlets and you click one of the yarns that I've used there, you can see that not only would that yoke sweater cardigan be listed there, but also the two gauntlets, the fingerless mitts that I made in that yarn for the same set. And you can log so much detail there. You can put in all the meterage, the yardage, whatever, grams, ounces, and actually Ravelry will put all this together. So if you added everything accurately, which actually isn't that much effort because the data is already in the yarn pages, so you just need to say how many skeins you have. Assume that you got whole skeins, and Ravelry will give you the totals, which right now kind of scares me. I might not check that bit, but you can do that. I did check it before Edinburgh and found that I had 17 kilos, which is a lot, and now I have a lot more. We might be looking at the double, so hey ho. The other thing that the stash thing makes amazing is the queue. So I've used the queue a lot. I know a lot of people use the queue more as their favorites, so like anything they can see themselves making ever. I use my favorites more that way, and what I put in the queue is stuff that I know I will be knitting soon. Like the things, I have 20 things in my queue right now, and I feel like, yes, I will definitely knit these. Sometimes things go away from the queue. I recently removed 2 things there, although one of them I still feel like I might knit. And you can link the yarn in your stash to that queue, and that will appear in the stash entry, and it will appear with the queue. So now you know which of your stash entries you will be using in a project. It's a very nice way of keeping your stash organized, even if it's stored like a mess. And it's a nice way of knowing what you have plans for or not. You can filter that in your stash page. You can take not queued and not in projects. You know, this is the yarn I literally have no idea what to do with, and I've never used yet. I recently had a question about that actually in the Ravelry group, so hopefully I have shed some light on that now. I use Ravelry to manage my stash, to know what I have plans for and what I don't have plans for, and which plans I have for those projects. So yes, I really love the queue. I love that I can actually list things in the queue that don't necessarily have a pattern. So right now the top of my queue is 2 sock patterns that I am going to design. So obviously they're not going to be there, but I can still add them, and I can still add yarn that I will be using for them. And also there's the wishlist feature, which initially only existed for the queue, but now it has been moved to the favorites, which is the next thing I want to cover, because I use my favorites as a very condensed archive. I have about 400 items there, and a lot of these are actually yarns and designers more so than projects and patterns, although that too. And you can easily filter through these and look at just designers maybe, and then you can click them and see what they design, or you can go to just projects and see the different sort of projects that I've found interesting that others have made. But the best thing they have come up with on Ravelry lately is the bundles. So you can make favorite bundles, and there's this one bundle that is fixed, and that's for your wish list, and I use that notoriously. I put all the yarns that I want there, and it kind of keeps me away from buying them because I know I will remember that I want them. So whenever it seems appropriate for whatever reason, I can look there and see, oh yeah, I do want that yarn. And I can put it there and like not feel so pushed to buy it. It's there, I won't forget it. And if I did, you know, maybe I don't want it that much. And it's a great place to put patterns that you want, so you know, there's no rush about buying them. You buy them when you need them. I really like the favorites thingy on Ravelry. I like the bundles. I have even made a bundle for eligible patterns for the Marius Knit Along. These are all the patterns that will be eligible. If there are any other patterns that you think should be there, because they are genuine Marius patterns, then feel free to add them. I also want to say that it is open to put the Marius chart. It's an 18 stitch repeat chart. It's the one that's used in all those patterns roughly. If you want to use that in just a plain sort of canvas pattern, if you want to say take the flax sweater and put your Marius there, you can do that. That's totally fine. My concern is that you use the genuine Marius chart. So yeah, I made a bundle for the Marius patterns that are eligible, so you can look at that as well. And another part of Ravelry that's a bit underestimated, because it's not particularly interesting, but it's so useful, and that is the needles and hooks. So you can store the needles that you have. Initially I just thought I could just give the numbers for each size and you can kind of check if you have all sizes you need. But you can add notes for each needle. So I basically written, you know, which are Addies, which are Knit Pro, which are Hayas, which are Chayogu. These are my favorites, and also Prim. Love Prim. I did go through the needles that I used the other episode, or 2 episodes ago, and I feel like I should have put that a bit easier. Generally, I use Knit Pro Nova's interchangeables, sometimes Knit Pro Dreams wood, and I also use Haya Sharp interchangeables. Those are my interchangeables, those are the ones I use. Simple as that. For fixed circulars, I use Prim a lot. I use Addie, especially Addie Lace. and I use some fixed knit pro, and I love the 9-inch Chargoos. So that's a short way of saying that, and I can totally see that by going through my needles page on Ravelry and see which ones I have, and some I have a lot of. And there are some of those actually I have a lot of because I don't like the needle material. And it's just a very useful thing. So if you are in a shop and you are like, oh, needle 2.5, 80 centimeters on sale, I think I need that, but I don't know. You go on Ravelry and you find that you have 8 of those, so maybe you don't need that after all. Now I want to end this on a high note, which is the Ravelry library. And I have more than 4,000 patterns in my Ravelry library. And it is not because I buy patterns recklessly. I've not bought 4,000 patterns. Lots of them are free patterns, and a lot of them are patterns I have in books. So if I find, say, I don't know, the Sublimitten books for instance, or the Cardigan books from Norway, and those patterns are added there, I add that book and suddenly I have all those patterns in my Ravelry library. And of course the patterns I have purchased via Ravelry will also be there. Lots of free patterns that I want in my library. I want to have them coming up when I'm filtering, say, socks that I have in my Ravelry that I want to knit. They will all come up. I collect patterns, let's be real. I'm not going to knit 4,000 patterns, so I don't recommend having that many unless you want to collect them too. But it's just amazing to have everything in there so that when you know you want to cast on, I don't know, a pair of socks, let's just use that as an example, instead of going through all those books that I have up here, you can't see them really, but so yeah, instead of doing that, I can go on Ravelry and I go patterns, category, socks, mid-calf, and then it's my notebook, and it's also another place you can take this. It's in my library. It's availability, I think, in my library, and maybe I can take in my library and free. This is like my selection of socks that I don't have to buy because I have them or they are free. It's just really clever. So say if I went out now and I might want to buy the Coop Knits sock book, I think they were great. I really want to buy them soon. They will be coming up there. I don't have to go through that booklet. So I love using Ravelry for that thing. That's often how I choose which patterns I want to make. Say if I bought sweater quantities of this yarn, I can go to clothes, sweater, availability in my library, and maybe also free, and I can tick the yarn weights. So I go fingering spot, DK. I think this could cover that range. And maybe I can also look up gauge because often people add that for their patterns. So this is 20. So this recommends 24 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. So I can give the range of, I don't know, 20 and up to 30 maybe, and that will give me an appropriate range for where I could use this yarn, unless I want to keep it double, which will make it more complicated. But yeah, that's kind of giving me a whole range of patterns to choose from, and I can just see which ones I like and then look for the projects and see if someone has done a variation of that I like even more. So very efficient pro Ravelry browsing here. You can tell that I use it a lot. So that's pretty much all I want to cover for my love of Ravelry. Congratulations Ravelry on your 10th year anniversary. There are many things that can be approved of Ravelry. I know a lot of people are kind of abandoning groups and maybe wanting to have Facebook groups instead, which personally I don't understand, because I think Ravelry groups are really good and it's a nice way of organising what you're on top of or not. Have I read this topic yet? Yes, no. Have I answered to this? Yes, no. I think also the message system could be improved upon, because you get all the friend requests and the messages you need to reply to in one bulk, which can be a bit messy. But generally, I love Ravelry. I think it is amazing and it has profoundly changed knitting. I think online knitting in general, but particularly in Ravelry, I don't think knitting will ever be the same. So thank you Ravelry. But yes, this is pretty much all I have for this episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great week. I hope you will have a great week until I see you next time. Bye.